Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Today, we're going to talk about Harvard and Jeffrey Epstein. Now, everybody listening to this podcast, everybody following this case, knows for a fact that Jeffrey Epstein had a very, very comfortable and cozy relationship with many, many scientists. And a good portion of those scientists and academics were based at Harvard. Now, the other day when the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals made their ruling, I said right away, why is there a judge from Harvard overseeing this ruling? Now, even if Judge Newsom is completely not tainted and he's unbiased and all of that jazz, it's about optics. Don't these people understand that optics matter? There should have been a different judge who sat on that panel. Not somebody with ties to Harvard, not somebody who could have had ties to any of these people that Epstein was funding. It's ridiculous on its face that a judge from Harvard would be tasked to sit on the three-judge panel. You're telling me there's not another judge on that panel that could have sat for that hearing? Harvard is an absolute den of scum and villainy, in my opinion. These people are horrendous, and the way that they covered up their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein for so long is enough to make your head spin. Anybody who's sending their kid to Harvard at this point, I don't even know what to tell you. Talk about a waste of money. Plenty of better universities to send your children at this point. These so-called higher education institutions, these Ivy League schools, are the absolute worst, in my opinion. The absolute worst. And we see it time and time again when we hear stories like this. And we hear about how Jeffrey Epstein was associated with all of these high-profile universities, and he had an office at Harvard, and he was giving this one money, and he was donating money to this program, and he was dropping off Gucci bags full of dough to this one. You know, come on. Enough is enough already. And these are the same institutions that will stand atop their ivory towers and scream down at the rest of us about how we should live our lives? The party's over for them as well. The academics are on notice. We've been talking about the academics on this podcast from the jump. These people are the kind of folks that are usually sliding underneath the spotlight. But what we've learned in this case is that these academics are just as sick as their buddies in the financial sector, it seems. So let's jump into this article by the Daily Mail and see what they have to say. This article is from the Daily Mail. The author is Francis Mulroney. Headline: Harvard math professor is placed on leave for giving Jeffrey Epstein his own office on campus and allowing the school's website to be used to burnish the pedophile's reputation after his 2008 conviction, Review finds. Now again, remember, this is after his first conviction, folks, okay? We're not talking about previously where they can make pretend and at least try and make the case, well, we didn't know, he hadn't been arrested, blah, 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 blah. No. This is after the fact. This is how corrupt people are when it comes to money. They don't care who's going to fund their science or who is giving them an endowment. As long as they're getting the money, as long as their project's moving forward, to hell with what the person has done previously in their lives. Who cares if they're a child molester? Sex trafficker? Nah, no big deal. Give me some of your money. And then these people are shocked when it comes out and there's an uproar and the public is enraged. I don't understand what planet these people think they live on, but they're certainly not living on planet Earth. They have a completely separate reality from the rest of us, and that's where they live, and within their reality, all of their actions make sense. Meanwhile, any civilized person who's taking a look at their actions knows that these people are sick and twisted. A Harvard math professor was placed on administrative leave Friday after a damning new report claimed he had continued to maintain an office on campus for convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein even after the deceased financier's, pedophile's, 2008 sex crimes conviction. Martin Nowak, the lead on Harvard's program for evolutionary dynamics, provided Epstein with a campus key card which allowed him to visit more than 40 times between 2010 and 2018, the report states. Now imagine, you're a parent, and you send your kid to Harvard thinking they're going to get this great education, they're going to be, 10 steps ahead of everybody else who didn't go to Harvard, etc., etc. And they show up and they have Martin Nowak as one of their professors. Well, because they have Martin Nowak as one of their professors, they're now exposed to Jeffrey Epstein. As a parent, do you think you would be comfortable with that? I know I certainly wouldn't be. A convicted sex offender having an office on the Harvard campus, running around with a bunch of girls that are, 18, 19 years old? This is a good idea? And for the Harvard brass to act like they had no idea, that's ridiculous. There needs to be a purging of the board at Harvard the same way the New York Academy of Art needs to be purged. These people are sick. A room in the department was established as Jeffrey's office, and Epstein, who died by apparent suicide in Manhattan jail in 2019, even had his own Harvard phone line. Again, so for the higher-ups to act like they didn't know what was going on, it's a joke, okay? So who set up the phone line? The IT department? So the IT director didn't know what was going on? The IT director didn't kick that up? These investigations are a bunch of BS, all right? These investigations, we never see the people in charge get in trouble with these internal investigations. What we see is the low-hanging fruit. The easy person to axe is who they go after. Never the CEO, never the trustees, none of that shit. It's always the professor, like it's just the professor's fault. Now, don't get me wrong, Nowak should shoulder a majority of the blame for bringing Epstein around. But what about his bosses? Is there no responsibility for those who are overseeing the department? A report added that Nowak also signed off on false, flattering statements about Epstein for the school's website as the deceased financier, pedophile, attempted to rehabilitate his image after his 2008 conviction for soliciting sex from an underage girl. And again, how many times do we talk about enablers on the podcast? We have different rings of people who helped Jeffrey Epstein do what he did, and Nowak is definitely an enabler. He helped to rehabilitate his image. He gave him an office on Harvard. He gave him the credibility of Jeffrey Epstein saying, well, I'm invited back to Harvard. Why won't you invite me to your party? If they let me at Harvard, how bad can I be? And you see, this is the problem with all of the enablers. And this is why all of the enablers must be called out. Because without their actions, without them enabling Jeffrey Epstein, Epstein would have there would have been no way Epstein would have been able to been active the way he was and conduct business the way he did. The professor's alleged actions came after the then Harvard president had barred the school from accepting any further donations from Epstein in 2008. So they don't have any control over what's going on, is what they're saying. The president of the board has no say on who has an office at Harvard or how their professors conduct themselves or who they associate with. What are you trying to say here? Are you trying to say that Harvard, there's no leadership structure and everybody just does what they want? Because for the last 11 years, nobody said shit about this. Now all of a sudden it's a big problem, huh? Now all of a sudden Harvard cares. You're not fooling me, Harvard. You don't care. It's all about optics at this point. It's all about saving face. You never cared about the survivors, and you still don't care about the survivors. Epstein pumped $9.2 million in donations into the university between 1998 and 2007, according to the month-long investigation carried out by Harvard's general counsel and an outside law firm. Again, Harvard's general counsel? So you're telling me that the internal lawyer for Harvard is going to give this a look and give it a real unbiased look and not care if Harvard leaves with a black eye? Yeah, okay. Who's paying his salary, folks? That's right, Harvard. Do you really think this man is going to do a pristine job, or this woman is going to do a pristine job of looking into this case and unfurling all of the facts as they are? Or are they going to hide a couple of things, put something in their pocket? We'll report this, but we won't report that. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened because I don't know. What I am saying, though, is I do not believe for a second that we can believe that a place like Harvard or Yale or any of these corporations is going to be transparent when they're investigating themselves. He was known for using his money to gain access to academics, professing an interest in science, and he earned a reputation for funding some of America's most prestigious institutions, such as MIT and Harvard. Yeah, we know that. And it wasn't just those institutions either. There were a lot of state universities that he was involved with. We know that at Arizona State with Lawrence Krauss, he had involvement there as well, as we touched on recently. So it's not just the most prestigious institutions. It's any institution where Jeffrey Epstein felt like he could get a foothold and benefit from a relationship with a university. In return, Epstein was welcomed onto campuses and given the opportunity to meet with faculty. He would also invite academics to his private Caribbean island. Oh, I'm sure he would. Because, as you all know, in my opinion, all of these academics, for the most part, are just as sick as his political buddies. You're telling me all of these nerds, and that's what these academics are, folks, make no mistake, that all of these nerds who never got girls in high school, probably never got girls in college, get invited to Jeffrey Epstein's island, and there's all these beautiful girls running around, and Epstein says you can, the island is yours. You're telling me that these dudes weren't involved? They didn't know what was going on? They didn't know that there was a bunch of young girls running around this island? Give me a break. Give me a break. And we already know about guys like Minsky. We already know what Virginia Roberts has said about Marvin Minsky. And to think that any of these other academics or scientists weren't partaking as well, I don't believe that. In my opinion, there's zero chance that that was occurring. The report published Friday expanded on what was already known about Epstein's link with Harvard, claiming that his presence on campus continued even after the university's then president, Drew Gilpin Faust, barred any more donations from the pedophile. About $200,000 of the funding provided by Epstein before the cutoff in 2008 remains unspent, the school said, and will be given to groups that support victims of sexual violence. And that's always their go-to, right? It's going to be given to groups that support sexual violence or human trafficking. Who are these groups? All right? Why don't all of these people who accepted money from Jeffrey Epstein get in contact with the lawyers of the survivors and try and coordinate with them to see where this money should go? Maybe the survivors have a charity that this money should be donated to. You know, the people directly affected by your decisions at Harvard. Maybe you should try and help those people out. The report found that while Harvard's top leaders cut ties with Epstein in 2008, he maintained close ties with Nowak, a math professor and director of the Program for Evolutionary Dynamics, a research center created in 2003 with $6.5 million from Epstein. So it wasn't just a funded project, okay, folks? He created the division. He put up $6.5 million in seed money to create the division at Harvard. Now, you mean to tell me that none of the presidents, none of the trustees, none of the board members knew who Jeffrey Epstein was or what he was up to? I know this was in 2003, but come on, the rumors were already swirling. And yet Harvard had no problem sliding right into bed with this serpent. It's one of those cases where it's just, you look at it and you say to yourself, how is it even possible that something like this could even occur? I mean, it's just crazy, folks. It is just crazy as hell. Nowak gave Epstein an office at the program's building in Harvard Square, the review found, and circumvented campus security rules to grant the financier, pedophile, a key card and unlimited access to the facility. Now, we know from firsthand accounts from Maria Farmer and others that Ghislaine Maxwell used to love to cruise places like Central Park looking for nubiles. Now, you mean to tell me that a campus like Harvard wouldn't be prime hunting ground for Jeffrey Epstein and his stooges to try and lure girls into his atmosphere with these promises and all of these pipe dreams that he loved to pass out? It's a very uncomfortable thought to think that a sexual predator and a man like Jeffrey Epstein had access to a campus like Harvard with his own office. It's really disturbing to think about. Epstein frequently visited Office 610, which was known as Jeffrey's office, and met with scholars to hear about their work, the review found. He brought his own rug and hung his own photos on the wall. And none of the administrators knew, huh? None of the administrators ever ventured down to this wing of the school? None of the board members ever went and checked in on what Mr. Nowak was up to? Wasn't important or something? Or, you guys just sit in your ivory-towered office all day drinking spritzers and eating caviar? What the hell is going on over there? Nowak argued that the office was Epstein's in name only, the report says, but others in the building said it was commonly known to be reserved for the pedophile. So all those people that said it was commonly reserved for Epstein, where were you outing this? Why were you quiet? Why were you being complicit? I have news for you. Anywhere I'm at, somebody like Jeffrey Epstein walks in the building, there's going to be a few words that tumble out of my mouth. For these people just to sit by and let this man have an office within their wing of the campus, it's gross. We do not take this step lightly, but the seriousness of the matter leads us to believe it is not appropriate for Professor Nowak to continue in his role, wrote Claudine Gay, Dean of Harvard's Faculty of Arts and Sciences, of the decision to place Nowak on leave. You should all be placed on leave. If I had a kid at Harvard, I'd be going crazy right now. I would be at the campus demanding that people are fired. It's not just the professor's fault. It's definitely a majority of the blame falls on his shoulders, but there's no institutional control. So how can we believe that this isn't still going on or won't go on in the future when Harvard refuses to take the reins and have some sort of institutional control over what's going on within its buildings? Harvard's report urges the university to develop clearer procedures for reviewing potentially controversial gifts and for enforcing bans on certain donors. Bacow said he has instructed top officials to implement the suggestions as soon as possible. Yeah, about 2 decades too late. All of a sudden, now it's a big deal because you're in the media. All of a sudden, because you're tied to Jeffrey Epstein, you're going to institute all of these new steps. A place like Harvard should have all of their ducks in a row from the jump. It shouldn't need outside pressure from content creators, legacy media, and survivors to do the right thing. A place like Harvard, where they're basically teaching and educating the leaders of tomorrow, should have at the very least a bit of a moral compass, in my opinion. We will always do our best to improve, Bacow said in a campus message on Friday. The report issued today describes principled decision-making, but also reveals institutional and individual shortcomings that must be addressed, not only for the sake of the university, but also in recognition of the courageous individuals who sought to bring Epstein to justice. So now all of a sudden he's talking about, oh yeah, and I want to make sure that I let everybody know that the survivors are brave. Well, that's nice. Lip service is nice and all, but what are you doing for the survivors? What are you doing? Have you reached out to them as a university to apologize? At the very least, you think that would be a step that should be taken, right? I know if I was in charge of this university, I'd be on the phone with every single one of these gals that has come forward with a claim against Epstein, and I'd be apologizing for the university's role in enabling Jeffrey Epstein's behavior, because this is outrageous. Epstein killed himself in his New York City prison cell, allegedly, in August after he was arrested on sex trafficking charges. He had pleaded not guilty to sexually abusing girls as young as 14 and young women in New York and Florida in the early 2000s. In lawsuits, women say the abuse spanned decades. Among other allegations against Nowak, the report alleged that he allowed his program's website to be used to burnish Epstein's reputation after his 2008 conviction. Boy, isn't that nice. Talk about enabling Jeffrey Epstein. This Martin Nowak character, top-notch enabler. Imagine a Harvard professor vouching for you amongst his buddies and his friends, and hey, if Nowak says he's cool, he must be cool, right? In reality, Nowak was just another one of Jeffrey Epstein's stooges, it looks like, and another one that didn't care a lick about Epstein's crimes. He only cared how deep he could get his hand into Jeffrey Epstein's pocket. In 2013, at the request of Epstein's publicist, Nowak agreed to post links to the pedophiles' websites, which had flattering descriptions of Epstein and made false claims about his levels of giving to Harvard, the review found. Oh yeah, I'm sure they did. They had to throw that in there, right? False claims of giving. Yeah, I think we need a second look at that, a more stringent look at that. Nowak is also accused of devoting a page on the program's website to Epstein, also at the request of the financier's publicist. Pedophiles' publicist, you mean? There's no evidence that Harvard's top officials knew about the postings, the report says. Epstein's page on the website was removed in 2014 after Harvard received complaints from a sexual assault survivors group. The report concludes that Harvard's senior leaders acted appropriately in their dealings with Epstein. Of course it does. Has there ever been one of these internal reports that really put the management structure on blast? Has there ever been one of these reports that really did the right thing and outed all of the rats at the top? No, never does. Always the low-hanging fruit. Just like the prison guards, Harvard as an institution is no different from the corrupt Department of Justice. Sorry, folks, just the facts. Former President Drew Foss decided to bar donations from Epstein after his conviction, the review says, and a university dean rejected a 2013 request from some faculty to reconsider the decision, saying it would be inconsistent with Harvard's values. Okay, some faculty, let's get the names of those faculty members that thought it was a good idea after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of his crimes to take donations from him. Can we have their names, please? Put their names out so we can discuss them and their disgusting behavior. But some faculty enjoyed close ties with Epstein. The report says a number, just a number, no names, no specific number, nothing, of faculty members visited Epstein at his homes in New York, Florida, New Mexico, and the Virgin Islands. Again, I want names, all right? The report needs to name all of the professors involved so we can go through them one by one and figure out what their role was in the Epstein organization, because obviously that's not a job that the prosecutors want to do. It's not a job that the legacy media in America wants to do. They leave it up to the Daily Mail to do the right thing. So can we get those names so that we can get busy building the blueprint? Some said they visited him in jail or took trips on his planes. The visits were done in a personal capacity, the report said, and do not appear to violate Harvard rules. Yeah, I don't care if it's personal, professional, whatever it may be. If you're one of my employees and you think it's a good idea to go hang out with Jeffrey Epstein, and in turn that's going to cause my business problems, well, I got news for you. You're out on your ass. You're fired. All right? A, because it's bad business, and B, because I don't want to be associated with somebody hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. Yet these faculty members, unnamed by the way, at Harvard have no problem. In fact, they're writing to the administration saying that they should be able to accept donations from this man. What a bunch of sick, disgusting bastards. In total, Epstein made more than 20 donations to Harvard, the largest of which was the $6.5 million to Nowak's research group. Smaller donations supported faculty research in psychology, economics, art, and education. Although his gifts were blocked after 2008, the report found that Harvard accepted $736,000 between his arrest and conviction. So while Jeffrey Epstein was on trial and waiting to be convicted, Harvard was still accepting donations from him. In their infinite wisdom, as one of the top-tier universities in the world, they couldn't figure out that taking money from Jeffrey Epstein was a bad idea. Yet we're going to listen to these guys about geopolitical issues, or about health issues, or about economics issues. Sorry, Harvard is a shit school in my opinion, okay? That's right, I said it, a shit school. Most went to Harvard's medical school, while 150,000 went to its Faculty of Arts and Sciences. We all know how he loves the arts programs, right? He loves naive art students. He loves naive artists. Jeffrey Epstein was a sick and disgusting bastard, and Harvard enabled his behavior. Point blank, Period. Harvard president Lawrence Bacow called for the review in September 2019 amid public outcry over the university's relationship with Epstein. Other schools have faced similar scrutiny, including nearby Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which revealed in January that Epstein donated $750,000 and visited the campus at least 9 times after his conviction. The former director of MIT's famed media lab, Joy Ito, resigned last year amid uproar over his ties to Epstein. He issued a public apology and vowed to raise money for victims of trafficking. That's what they all say when they get busted, right? Oh, well, I'm sorry that I took part in hurting the survivors of Epstein, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to raise money for victims of trafficking. That's what I'm going to do, because that makes everything better. To these people, money makes the world go round. They have no conscience, they have no moral compass, and they do not care about me, you, or your children. Get it through your heads, folks. These people do not care. We're up against some of the most evil people in the history of the world. And all of these enablers, all of these people that vouched for Jeffrey Epstein, all of these people that were in his inner circle, all of these people that he used to refurbish his image, all of you were disgusting ass excuses for human beings. And as the information continues to roll out and the names continue to come into the light, we will continue to talk about all of the people who were involved with Jeffrey Epstein and his criminal organization until they all face justice. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, I'll be back later on tonight with the Daily Drop.